Hello. Hello, Block Island and beyond. Oh, my dad's there already. Hi, Dad. How's everybody this Friday afternoon? Right? Did I get that right? We made it to Friday? I think we made it to Friday. You made it to Frankenstein Tea. Welcome. No matter what time of day you're hearing this, it's always up on the YouTube channel to be enjoyed at your leisure. It is 3 p.m., a daily program from the Island Free Library, live at 3 with me, Kristen. I'm the director of the library. Welcome. Frankenstein Tea is a chance for us to connect with each other, to check in with each other, see how everybody's doing. Today is a big day on Block Island, a big day in Rhode Island. I'm not sure if it's across the country or if it's the same for you, Dad, in Pennsylvania, but restrictions are lifted somewhat today. Shelter in place is somewhat lifted. I don't want to speak too much about that, though, because I have not heard the latest from the governor, and I could only watch some of a very long meeting our local town council had this morning. I had to go off to other meetings. And I talk about my meetings a lot on here, and I just want everybody to know those are all Zoom meetings. I am not meeting with anyone in person. That aside, so I'm not going to talk too much about what's happening with the restrictions. You have what, Dad? No restrictions are lifted? You're still shelter in place? My dad just wrote me nope. Well, I'm not, and as I said, I'm not even sure what happened on Block Island, but it was the intention of the governor of Rhode Island and the town council to ease restrictions. We are still mask wearing. We are still social distancing. We're moving into a governor's phased plan of reopening. This is the first phase of reopening. And he says, right, still shelter in place. Good for you guys. I think that's a good move. But we in Rhode Island are in phase 1, I believe, of a phased reopening. And I hope everybody takes it slow. My father says 1 more month in Pennsylvania. Wow. Huh. Interesting. All right, Poppy, hang in there. I'll be here every day, Dad. Every day. You can count on that. At Frankenstein Tea, I have been known to read, and I think it's over on that table, or it could be in my pile here, a little bit of a mental health check-in list. And today for your mental health check-in, I want to just say that, like, you may not be ready to go outside, just because these restrictions or, have been relaxed somewhat, that it just may not be something you're comfortable with. And I just want to tell everybody, like, that's totally fine. Take it slow, take it at your pace. I encourage that. Always do what's best for your health and your family's health and your household's health. It doesn't have to be this like everybody in the pool today kind of thing. And in fact, that is not what it is. So don't do that. But for us on Block Island, that's a little bit of a hard walk, right? Maybe for others in Rhode Island, maybe for other people that are listening. We are a tourist-driven economy. Our season usually starts on Memorial Day. That feels like it's creeping right up on us, and it's going to pass without any start to our season. And so we still have a lot to navigate. So from the library director to her patrons, I say, take it slow, and that is totally fine. I'm going to have a sip of tea. I indulge for a few minutes when I first wake up in the morning and, scroll around in my phone, and I look at some emails and, start to reconnect with what I have to do each day. And I get a little briefing from the New York Times. And this was in today's briefing. And I thought I'd share it with you today because it's appropriate to what we've been doing here at Frankenstein Tea. Frankenstein Tea is short stories for adult listeners. And I have a pile of books here, and I think I'm going to read something else. I'm purposely not showing you the cover in case I get to it tomorrow. But if I don't get to that story and I only get to this, I hope you enjoyed this. I might get to this. I might get to other things. We never know. But this, we have read Gabriel Garcia Marquez together at Frankenstein Tea here. I have read to you a few of his stories. He's one of my favorite writers. He has passed away. And this is from the New York Times, May 8th opinion page. A Letter to My Father, Gabriel Garcia Marquez, by Rodrigo Garcia, May 6, 2020. Gabo, April 17th was the 6th anniversary of your death, and the world has gone on largely as it always has, with human beings behaving with stunning and creative cruelty, sublime generosity and sacrifice, and everything in between. One thing is new, a pandemic. It originated, as far as we know, in a food market where a virus made its leap from an animal to a human. One small step for one virus, but a great leap for its kind. It's a creature that evolved over an incalculable time through natural selection into the voracious little monster that it is now. But it's so unfair to refer to it in such terms, and I regret if my words have offended it. It actually bears no particular ill will toward us. It takes and takes because it can. Surely we can relate. It's nothing personal. Not a day goes by that I don't come across a reference to your novel, Love in the Time of Cholera, or a riff on its title, or to the insomnia pandemic in 100 Years of Solitude. It's impossible not to speculate about what you would have made of all this. You were always fascinated with epidemics, real or of the literary imagination, as well as with things and people that return. You weren't born when the Spanish flu pandemic scourged the planet, but you grew up in a house where storytelling reigned and where a plague, like ghosts and regrets, must have made for good literary material. You said that people would speak of long past events as things that happened in the days of the comet, most likely referring to the passing of Halley's Comet early in the 20th century. I remember how eager you were to see it with your own eyes when it returned toward the end of the millennium. It mesmerized you, a mysterious clock striking the silent hour once every 76 years, a cycle approximating the time allotted to humans. A coincidence? Probably just another red herring. You were an atheist, but you also pondered that it was inconceivable that there was no master plan. Remember? No teller of the tale. In this regard, you now have more insight than I do, perhaps. A pandemic is back. Despite the great advances of science and the much celebrated ingenuity of our species, our best defense so far is to simply stay indoors, to hide in caves from the predator. It's a humbling moment for those with at least a little inclination toward humility. For others, it's another bothersome thing to crush. Two countries dear to you, Spain and Italy, are among the hardest hit. Some of your oldest friends are making the best of it in the same flats in Barcelona, Madrid, and Milan, where you and Mercedes visited innumerable times over decades. I've heard several people of that generation say that they are determined to persist, if for no other reason than to avoid being killed by a flu after decades of surviving cancers, tyrants, jobs, responsibility, and marriage. It's not just death that frightens us, but the circumstances. A final exit without goodbyes, attended by strangers dressed as extraterrestrials, machines beeping heartlessly, surrounded by others in similar situations, but far from our people. Your very own worst fear, loneliness. You often spoke of Daniel Defoe's A Journal of the Plague Year as one of your greatest influences. But until yesterday, I had forgotten that even your favorite of favorites, I just looked this up. Epidus Rex, hinges on a king's efforts to end a plague. It was always the tragic irony of the king's fate that was at the forefront of my recollection. But it was the plague that unleashed the forces that precipitated the outcome. You said once that what haunts us about epidemics is that they remind us of our personal fate. Despite precautions, medical care, age, or wealth, anyone can draw the unlucky number. Fate and death, many a writer's favorite subjects. I think that if you were here now, you would, as always, be enthralled by man. The term man is not much in use that way anymore, but I'll make an exception, not as a nod to the patriarchy, which you detested, but because it will echo in the ears of the young man and aspiring writer you once were, with more sensibility and ideas in your head than you knew what to do with, and with a strong sense that destinies are written, even for a creature in God's image and cursed with free will. You would pity our frailty. You would marvel at our interconnectedness, be saddened by the suffering, enraged by the callousness of some of the leaders, and moved by the heroism of people on the front lines. And you would be eager to hear how lovers were braving every obstacle, including the risk of death, to be together. Most of all, you would be as endeared to humans as you ever were. A few weeks ago, during our first few days sequestered at home, my head was straining to explain to myself what it could all mean, or at least what could come out of it. I failed. The fog was too heavy. Now that things have become more quotidian, as things do eventually, even in the most frightening wars, I am still unable to frame it all in any satisfying way. Many are sure that life will never be the same. It is likely that some of us will make big changes. More of us will make a few changes. But I suspect most will return to the dance. Won't there be a good argument to be made that the pandemic is proof that life vanishes in the most unexpected ways, and so we must live big and live now? One of your own grandchildren has expressed that opinion. Restrictions on movement are starting to relax in some places, and little by little, the world will attempt to venture out toward normality. Even daydreaming of imminent freedom has many starting to forget the promises they recently made to the gods. They drive to process the impact of the pandemic on our deepest selves and on the entire tribe is waning. Even many among us who long to understand what has happened will be tempted to interpret it to our liking. Already shopping threatens to make a grand return as our favorite narcotic. I'm still in a fog. It seems for now that I'll have to wait for the masters, present and future, to metabolize the shared experience. I look forward to that day. A song, a poem, a movie, or a novel will finally point me in the general direction of where my thoughts and feelings about this whole thing are buried. When I get there, I'm sure I'll still have to do some of the digging myself. In the meantime, the planet keeps turning and life is still mysterious, powerful, and astonishing. Or as you used to say, with fewer adjectives and more poetry, nobody teaches life anything. That is from the New York Times opinion page today, May 8th, by Rodrigo Garcia. He is the son of Gabriel Garcia Marquez, someone we have read a few times here at Frankenstein Tea, and I hope to read again to you. I hope you enjoyed that. I'm going to read one more thing. I'm going to take a sip of tea and I'm going to let that sit with you for another minute. Maybe you can find that online. If you can't, I'm happy to share it with you. Somehow I got one printed. I don't have a free subscription to the Times, but sometimes they let me in. But I will show you the picture of him and his father there. And I think it's, it's the picture above they're mimicking. Okay, so one more today. Should we do one more? Let's do one more. It's a short one. It's by Franz Kafka. It's from the Metamorphosis and Other Stories. It's an other story. I'm not starting the Metamorphosis today. It is, this says it's a Barnes & Noble book, and it was copyright in 1996. This short story by Kafka is called Before the Law. Before the law stands a doorkeeper. A man from the country comes to this doorkeeper and asks to be admitted to the law. But the doorkeeper informs him that he cannot grant him admittance at this time. The man ponders this and then asks whether he will be admitted at some point in the future. It is possible, says the doorkeeper, but not at present, because the gate stands open, as always, and the doorkeeper steps aside. The man stoops down to look through the gateway to the interior. On seeing this, the doorkeeper laughs and remarks, "If it's so exciting, then just try going in despite my interdiction. But take note, I am powerful, and I am only the lowliest doorkeeper. In hall after hall stand other doorkeepers, each more powerful than the last. The mere sight of the third doorkeeper is more than even I can endure." The man from the country never anticipated such difficulties. The law, he thinks, should be accessible at all times and to everyone. But when he now takes a closer look at the doorkeeper in his fur coat, with his large pointed nose and his long, skinny, black tartar beard, he decides that he had better wait for permission to enter after all. The doorkeeper gives him a stool and allows him to set it to one side of the door. There he sits for days and years. He makes many attempts to be admitted and exhausts the doorkeeper with his pleas. The doorkeeper often conducts little interviews with him, asking him about his home and many other things. But the questions are put indifferently, much as high-ranking officials would put them, and he always concludes by repeating that he cannot yet admit him. The man, who came well equipped for his journey, uses everything he has, however valuable, for the purpose of bribing the doorkeeper. The doorkeeper accepts everything, but says, as he does so, "I'm only accepting this so you won't think there's something you haven't tried." Throughout the many years, he observes the doorkeeper fixedly, with almost no interruption. He forgets the other doorkeepers, and this first one seems to him the sole obstacle between himself and the law. He curses his miserable fate loudly and recklessly in the early years. But later, as he grows old, he just grumbles to himself. He becomes childish, and since he has come to know even the fleas in the doorkeeper's fur collar during the long years of studying him, he begs the fleas to help him and to help win the doorkeeper over to his side. Eventually, his eyesight begins to fail, and he does not know whether his eyes deceive him or whether it is really growing darker around him. But through the gloom, he can now definitely make out a radiance that pours unendingly from the doorway of the law. Now he no longer has much time to live. Before his death, all the experiences of these long years come together in his head to form one question that he has not yet put to the doorkeeper. He beckons to him because he can no longer raise his cramped and stiffening body. The doorkeeper has to bend down to him, since the difference in their heights has changed drastically, much to the man's disadvantage. So what is it that you still want to know? Asks the doorkeeper. You are insatiable. Surely everyone strives to reach the law, says the man. So how is it that no one but me has ever begged for admittance? The doorkeeper recognizes that the man is near the end, and, in order to penetrate his failing senses, shouts, "No one else could ever be granted admission here, as this gate was just for you. Now I am going to close it." That was a little Kafka for you on this Friday afternoon. Not sure if my father liked that, but hopefully my mother's on there and she did. I should say, I should have prefaced it, and I'm apologetic that I did not, that every time I said the law, both T and L were capitalized. I don't know if T was every time, but L definitely was every time. I'm happy to read that one again if that is necessary. Thanks for coming to Frankenstein Tea. Enjoy your Friday evening. I'll be here tomorrow, Saturday at 3 o'clock on YouTube. If you haven't already subscribed, please do. This is part of our ongoing library programming. It will be a hybrid of library services, which means some of them will be coming to you through the internet, and YouTube's going to be a great place to find us. So have a great afternoon. Stay well, everybody. Stay in, stay strong, stay safe, and go in peace.